My pleasure at this time to welcome Mark Thomas. It's a season in our church life when we hear from our prospective officer nominees. Last week, Scott Parnell, Deacon nominee, and this week, Mark, whom I think most of you know, a landscape architect, and wife Retha, I think, is with him, a nurse practitioner. The thing I love about Mark is that I've got more hair than he has. So.
I like the steps. Good morning. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mark Thomas, better known in this circle as Retha Thomas's husband, as Jim just pointed out. We've been married. I've been married to the love of my life, to Retha, the beautiful and intelligent Retha Thomas, for 34 years and counting. We have 2 children and 2 wonderful grandchildren. I grew up in rural Mississippi under the watchful and reverent eye of my single-parent mom, Peggy Thomas. She was a caring soul with a love for God, family, and country. I don't remember a time in my childhood or adolescent life when the doors of our hometown church were open and we weren't inside. My mom believed in working and worshiping in the church and passed this on to me. As a child, regularly attending church and Sunday school, I remember family members and childhood friends within a certain age group standing before the congregation professing their acceptance of Christ as their Lord and Savior. This usually happened following an instructive class in groups of kids with a measure of fanfare and celebration. When I reached that magical age, I remember asking my mom what this was all about. She did her best to explain, but also instructed me not to go along with the group if I didn't understand or if I didn't feel ready. Ready for what? I didn't understand, but I had to make a decision. So it wasn't until years later, while I was sitting in those same wooden pews that I'd sat in all my life, that I accept Christ into my heart, as I felt God tug at my heart and soul. A decision was before me. I finally knew what ready meant and what my decision meant. I've never held a formal position in any church I've attended, but most always participated in routine activities as to be a part of the church body. Imagine my surprise when I received a phone call from John Avery informing me that I'd been nominated to serve as a deacon for this church. My first question to John was, who would have nominated me? If you know John Avery, he said, "Don't worry, Mark. It was probably a visitor visiting that Sunday and just wrote your name down." I almost thought it was true. However, as we moved through our conversation, I began to understand the seriousness and weight of the nomination. I learned of the nominating process and the role of deacons to the people of this church and to the church as a whole. Honestly, I began to grow hesitant and a bit scared. I wasn't sure if I had the spiritual standing with my fellow nominees or with God to fulfill such a role. Now a new decision was before me. You see, I'm a flawed man. I'm a sinful man. But I believe in divine intervention, not coincidences. So as I sat in church last Sunday, I heard Pastor Heath say, "Hitch up your britches and get ready for work." I also heard Pastor Jim say, or ask, "What are you scared of and where is your faith?" As I listened, I couldn't help but think that God had placed me in that seat last week to hear those words and tug at my heart once again to eliminate any doubt or fear I had about serving him or you, just as he'd done so many years ago in my hometown church in accepting him. As I reflected on my mom's earlier instructions, not to go along to get along, but to understand the issue before me and make an informed decision with God's direction. So with that, I'd like to thank the person or persons who nominated me, and although I stand before you still a bit unsure of my path forward, please know that I am full of faith and that with God's help and direction, I will step up to this call and serve him, this church, and you, whom I love. Thank you.